trashy. It just felt so real. A cardboard cutout of Tom Brady. So, I did see the movie around the time though. That is unfortunate. What is up, book friends? Today's video is all about all of the books that I read in June. So this month, it was a decent month for me. I read 7 books, which is not a bad month for me, not the best, but overall, I'm really happy with what I read this month. So if you want to hear more about all of the books that I read in June, just keep watching. So the first book I read in June was The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I really loved this book. I thought it was just beautifully written, and it really got me to think about something that I don't think I ever would have thought of if I hadn't read this book. So The Midnight Library follows a woman named Nora. She's in her 30s, and she's depressed, and she's just not having a good time. She is having a rough go of life. She's having trouble seeing just her purpose in life and what she's supposed to be doing, and she has a ton of regrets. One day, after a particularly rough day, she makes the decision to unalive herself. So instead of ending up unalive immediately, she ends up in a place called the Midnight Library. So the Midnight Library is a place that's suspended between life and death. And this is a place that all of the possible lives she could have lived are stored. So she actually gets to go through and pick a book which is representative of a life she could have lived based on a certain decision that she made, and she gets to actually go into it and live that life. And so she picks out a bunch of different lives based on decisions that she regrets. So whether she didn't break up with that guy, or she picked this career path, whatever it was, she got to see all of the different lives that she could have lived. And it was just really beautiful, and throughout that she is searching for what she thinks could have fulfilled her, but spoiler, she never really finds it. It was just a really emotional journey, and it's beautiful to see her come to the realization that she did, and it's just really, it's sentimental and it's thoughtful, and it really makes you think about all of the blessings that you have in your life. And that, of course, yeah, things aren't perfect, but they don't need to be in order for you to appreciate the life that you're living. So I really enjoyed this book. So the second book I read was When Fate Breaks by Nikki Witt. I really wanted to read this book just because Nikki is a fellow booktuber, and I really just wanted to support a small creator, and especially a new author writing her first book. I aspire to write a novel one day, and it's just so great to see people just going for it and doing it, and it's really inspiring to me. So I went into this book knowing that it takes place in an alternating timeline narrative structure, and I know that I'm just not a fan of that. I'm not sure why, I'm just not a fan of it. But I really wanted to give this book a chance anyway. And it really did surprise me. With people we meet on vacation, I think I mentioned in my last video that I really stopped reading the flashback sections, and I really didn't give those sections a really good chance. After a while, I was just not paying as much attention. But while reading this book, I really wanted to give it the best chance I could. So I really did. I read every section as I would normally. And to be honest, I was really surprised with how well I thought the alternating timeline worked in this case. There were some sections that I thought could have been trimmed, but that's just me. That's just my opinion, and that I like to keep things moving. It was just a really sweet story.
Hi there, future me here, along with my own disappointed face. I realized I did an absolutely horrific job of describing what When Fate Breaks is about. I don't think I described it at all. Or if I did, I just did a really bad job. When Fate Breaks follows Annie Jacks, and she is about to get married, and she just moved into her dream house with her fiance. The only issue with the dream house is that it has this dilapidated greenhouse that is really in need of repair. So she calls her old friend Blake, he's in the construction industry now, and This is someone that she grew up with and she just has love for, but it just never worked out. And I think you can see where this story is going to go. There's going to be a lot of tension, secrets will be revealed, and love will be rekindled. And yeah, it was just a great time. So I highly recommend you check it out.
My favorite thing about this book, Nikki just did such an amazing job with Remy's character. From the first interaction that we see of him, you can just tell that he is an awful person, and you do not feel bad in the slightest that he is about to get cheated on and dumped. Like, it makes you actually very happy that this guy is going to get what is coming to him. Just from the very first scene where he interacted with Annie, he didn't say anything particularly rude or mean. He was just dismissive. Like, you could tell with his dialogue that he was dismissive and thought super highly of himself and was kind of a narcissist. And that came through just so well. And I just love when authors are able to use just really simple language and get such a strong emotion and imagery and all of that across. And so yeah, I think Nikki did an amazing job, and I can't wait to see more from her. So the third book I read this month was none other than The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. I have a full review on this book if you want to go and watch it, where I'll talk about it more. But long story short is I really loved it. I thought it was exciting and well put together, and the imagery was great. And the main thing I loved about it was the ensemble cast. I find ensemble casts so interesting because the world doesn't revolve around one person. And so I just think stories are way more interesting when you have a bunch of characters and you can see how they're interacting with each other, how their stories intersect. And yeah, I just thought it was well written and it was amazing. The Paris Apartment follows a girl named Jess. Jess is down on her luck and she moves from London to Paris to live with her brother. When she gets to Paris, she finds that Ben is living, first of all, in a pretty bougie apartment, and she is not sure how he's affording this. But aside from that, she goes to the apartment and she finds that he is just missing. She can't find him. He's not answering any of her calls or texts, and he's just nowhere to be found. When just a few hours earlier, he knew she was coming and he was like, yeah, call me. She's looking for him, and all of the neighbors that live in this apartment are just acting super sketchy. Like, everybody sort of admits that they know Ben, but they don't want to talk about him. They don't want to give any information about how they really know him, how close they are. So yeah, everybody's just acting weird. And so Jess just needs to find out what happened to Ben. Where is he? Why is he missing? And what is up with these neighbors? I thought it was just so exciting. The story moved along really quickly. From the very beginning, the story just sets off quickly, and it was just a page turner, non-stop action. I thought it was great. So the fourth book I read was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Jenkins Reid. This book was not at all what I was expecting. Actually, I don't know what I was expecting when I picked up this book. For some reason, I thought it was going to be kind of trashy. I had honestly no idea what it was going to be like, but it was not like that at all. So this story starts out following Monique. She is a somewhat low on the totem pole journalist at a magazine. One day she gets a call from the team of Evelyn Hugo, who is a famous actress. She's older now, but she's been acting for decades, and she's just really famous. And she specifically requests that Monique write a feature about her in the magazine. And Monique is just baffled. She doesn't know why a huge star like Evelyn Hugo would want her writing this feature. But Monique is feeling pretty down on her life too. She's getting divorced. She's not moving up in her career as quickly as she would hope. And so she thought, what does she really have to lose? So she goes to meet Evelyn, and the meeting doesn't go as expected at all. So basically, Evelyn tells Monique that she doesn't want a feature in the magazine. She wants Monique to write a full biography of her. And Evelyn is going to tell her her entire story of her life framed by her 7 husbands, and she wants Monique to publish this posthumously. Monique is very confused, but she goes along with the plan anyway. So throughout the story, we find out all about Evelyn and her 7 husbands and why she married each of these husbands. And it has nothing to do with the stereotypical reasons of why you would think a woman would have so many husbands. So as Evelyn tells the story of her 7 husbands and her experience in the industry, she tackles homophobia, sexism, patriarchy, misogyny, all of those things that you expect in the entertainment industry, but you never really get to see how it affects someone as a person. The way Evelyn told the story was just so beautiful. It really brought heart to an industry that you think is just so vain. So even though Evelyn is a character, Taylor Jenkins Reid really brought her to life as an amazing woman. It felt really real and really heartfelt, and I just thought it tackled so many important issues while being such an entertaining story. So if you haven't read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I highly recommend it. So the 5th book I read was The Girl Who Played with Fire by Steig Larsson. This is the 2nd book in the Millennium series by Steig Larsson. And I had actually read the 1st book in the series, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, about 10 years ago. I read the book in college, and I started the series in college. And for some reason, I just never finished the series. I knew that there were 2 more books at the time, but I'm not sure why. I just never got around to reading it. So The Girl Who Played with Fire follows Michael Blomkvist and Lisbeth Salander separately. We don't see them together like they were together in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. At the start of the book, Lisbeth is off on her own and she really doesn't want anything to do with Blomkvist, and it's not clear why. Blomkvist really wants to be Elizabeth's friend, and he keeps trying to reach out to her, but he's not sure why she just doesn't want to speak with him anymore. So, to be honest, the plot was so complicated, I don't know if I would be able to explain it to you adequately here. I can tell you that I really did enjoy the book. It was riveting. There was a ton of action. It was an exciting book, but if you ask me to explain the plot and how everything went, I don't think I would be able to do it. And if you wanted a spoilery plot, I definitely wouldn't be able to explain how everything worked out. So it's one of those books that you'll really just have to trust me when I say it's a really well put together storyline and narrative. It's very exciting, but it's complicated. So it's not a light read. In order to get the most out of this book, you really have to, I think, sit down and concentrate and read. If I had listened to this in an audiobook, I think I would have missed a lot more than I probably already did. I probably missed some things already. That's probably why I can't explain how everything worked out. This book is translated from Swedish into English, and because of that, the writing style is just different from what you would expect from an American written book. It can be a little bit wordy at times. There's a lot of info dumping, so if you have trouble just absorbing lots of information, sometimes I have trouble with that too. There were moments that I think my eyes were glazing over, but I tried to just focus on the bigger picture. So if I had to sum it up, I would just say this book it's a ride, and you have to just be willing to go on the ride with this book and maybe not think too much into each detail, but just have fun and enjoy the roller coaster. The 6th book I read was Shrill by Lindy West. This is a book that I think I picked up because I was looking for something that was going to be similar to My Body by Emily Ratajkowski. I just really enjoyed that book. I enjoyed the feminist essays. I thought it was just so thoughtful, and I really just enjoy hearing women's perspectives of feminist issues and just body issues. So I picked up this book, and it was okay. It wasn't exactly what I was looking for. Emily's writing was just really calm and contemplative and thoughtful, and that's more my style. The writing style in Shrill is a little bit more, I don't want to say crass, but straightforward. Lindy is a comedian, and so it's written in more of a straightforward comedic style, and I think I just didn't care for the writing style as much. It was also really focused on fat phobia and just being a fat woman, and I think I identified with that a little bit less. If you enjoy reading feminist essays, I still recommend reading this book. It wasn't bad by any means, it just wasn't my favorite, and I don't think I identified with it as much as I would have liked to. So the last book I read in June was Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. I was really excited to read this book just because it's a book about libraries, and if you know me, you know I love libraries, I love books, so anytime that is represented in a book, it feels like coming full circle. So this story follows a girl named Elizabeth. She is training at a magical library to be a warden of the Grimoires. She has lived in this library since she was a child, and now she's almost at the age where she can begin her training, so she is quite excited. So one night, she wakes up and she just hears some noises, so she gets out of bed to go and investigate, and she goes into the library and she finds her director dead. The killer is nowhere to be found, and she is not sure what's going on, but she quickly gets implicated in a crime she didn't commit. So she gets taken to the Capitol to face things. So she gets taken to the Capitol, where she figures out that this crime is way bigger than just the killing of one director. This is a centuries-old conspiracy that only she has the power to take down. For some reason, it took me a really long time to get into it. I think I was only really invested in the story in the last quarter of the book. The first 3/4 of the book, I kind of suffered through it. One thing I noticed when I was reading it is I just kept referring to the synopsis over and over, and I kept rereading it, and I think it was because I was looking for guidance on where the story was going, because just for so long it felt like it wasn't going anywhere, and I was just confused, and so I was looking to the synopsis to tell me where the story was going and what I was supposed to be looking for. And I was okay with that for the first few times, maybe throughout the first half of the book, maybe a little less. But after that, I just thought, this is kind of ridiculous. I haven't figured out what I'm supposed to be looking for yet, that I have to keep rereading the synopsis in hopes that it will tell me what I should be looking for, where this is going. And I think I was starting to get frustrated. So between half to 3/4, I was just really frustrated, and I considered DNFing it at that point, but I really just wanted to push through. I'm always glad that I do push through. I really don't like to DNF books if I don't really have to. I just like to give things as much of a chance as I can, because at the end of the day, someone worked really hard on this, and other people in the world really love it, and so it's not usually ever that it's a bad book. It's just something that I'm not getting. So if I push through, then maybe I'll get it, and I can see what all the hype is about. Now that I finished it, I would say I get it a little bit more. So there's a lot of it in the book that I know I did miss, but I don't think I care enough to reread it. I've gotten generally the gist of the story, and so I think I'm done. One thing I noticed about this book was the writing style was very interesting. I was thinking the writing is just really beautiful. There's a ton of imagery, and the descriptions are just so vivid, and I thought it was great. But then towards the end, I think I was starting to feel a little bit disillusioned, just because I felt like the writing was trying so hard to be lyrical and beautiful and flowery, and that came at the expense of having a narrative that made sense. I felt like I was like a sheet was being pulled over my eyes a little bit, like that I was supposed to just enjoy the book for what it is because it had such beautiful writing, when the story just wasn't capturing my attention, and the characters were almost kind of non-existent. One thing that really made it difficult for me to get into this book was that the characters had almost zero personality. They were just so bland. So bland that I think they could have been replaced with 2 walking string beans, and I wouldn't have known the difference. And whenever that happens in a book, that's unfortunate. So that is everything I read in June. So I did read parts of 3 additional nonfiction books, but I mean, none of them really stood out to me. I might mention them next month if I finish them, but I'm not actually sure if I'm going to finish the entirety of any of those books. So that's about it for this month. If you got to this point in the video, leave me a croissant emoji in the comments and tell me what was your favorite book that you read this month. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye!